So we are being asked to solve this cubic inequality here. The first thing that we're going to do is just take everything over to one side. So that means I'm going to get 3x cubed minus 8x squared. Then I'll subtract 33x over, and I'll subtract negative 10 over. So that is going to be less than or equal to 0. That's how we're customarily used to seeing things, when they're less than or equal to 0, or we're just used to seeing a 0 on this side. But there's still one fundamental way that this is really, really different from what we have previously seen. If I just scroll up for a moment, we're used to seeing questions asked like this, in which everything is nicely factorized for us. And then from here, it's really easy to identify what our X-intercepts are going to be. For example, for this one, it would be 3, it would be negative 2, it would be negative 1. How easy was that? And that's because it's nicely factorized for us. And then we can graph it and then solve our inequality. But what we've been given here is far different. As you can see, it is not factorized. So in order to find what our X-intercepts are going to be and then eventually graph it, we're going to have to do that factorization ourselves. So this is why this is going to be such a long problem. So I hope you're comfortable, because it's going to take some time. So when we have to factorize a cubic, the first thing that we're going to ask is, can I take out a common factor? And unfortunately, I can't. The next thing I would ask is, can I factorize by grouping? So can I take out a common factor here and a common factor here? Unfortunately, again, I cannot. So that means what we're going to have to do is the very long process, which is going to involve our first step, which is going to be the factor theorem. The factor theorem says that if we put in an x value and we get 0 out, we therefore have found a factor. So let's begin with that. So let's begin by just considering what numbers we're going to sub in. And remember, we're just going to sub in factors of our last term here. So we don't have to sub in anything under the sun. It's just factors of this last term. And always remember, it's always the best move to start with x equals 1, because that's the easiest one that you can do, the easiest thing you can sub in. And it's always a factor of whatever you've got there. Okay, so if I let x equal 1, what am I going to get? So if I just sub it straight in, I'm going to get a 3 here. I'm going to get a negative 8 here. I'm going to get negative 33 there. I'm going to get negative 10 there. Now that quite clearly is not going to be equal to 0. I don't have to do the calculations. It's quite clear it's not equal to 0. So let's now move on to our next one. Let's consider negative 1. So if I was to put in x equals negative 1 into this, what would I get out? For that, I would get negative 3. For this one, I would get negative 8 again. For this one, I would get plus 33. And then for here, I would get negative 10. Once again, it's quite clear that isn't going to be equal to 0. All right, so let's keep on going. Let's now put in x is equal to 2. So if I was to let x equal 2 here, what am I going to get? Now, I might like to do a second step here just so I don't mess this up. It's going to be 3. 2 cubed is 8, so let's put an 8 there. Minus, oh, not an 8 there. Then I've got 8, and then I'm putting 2 squared, which is going to be 4. Then I'm putting a 2 here, which is going to be negative 66. Then I'm going to get negative 10. Now I have to clean this up. This is going to be 24, negative 32, negative 66. Nope, this isn't going to work. Negative 10, that is not going to be equal to 0. Which means I now have to move on to x equals negative 2. This better work. X is equal to negative 2. If I sub that in, what am I going to get? I'm going to get 3. Now if I cube negative 2, I'm going to get negative 8. Then over here, I'm still going to get 4 there. Here, I'm going to get plus 66. Then I'm going to get negative 10. Now, what is this going to be? Let me now do another line. This is going to be negative 24. This is going to be negative 32. This is going to be plus 66. This will be negative 10. And I could then gather together all the negatives here. Negative 24, negative 32, negative 10. That's going to be negative 66. This is good. Plus 66. That is going to be equal to 0. So let's now put in a smiley face, because we are very happy that we don't have to do that anymore. And we can now identify what my factor is going to be. What is my factor going to be? So I can say, therefore, our factor is going to be x plus 2. So remember, we have to change the sign to get it into there. So that's my factor. Perfect. What is the next thing I am going to do? So let's just zoom out here and have a look at our question again. There it is. Okay, so hopefully you remember the next thing that we do when we're factorizing a cubic is polynomial long division. but I'm going to be doing a bit of a shortcut, and I'm going to be using synthetic division to do this, just to make our lives a little bit easier. So remember, with synthetic division, what you're going to first do is you're going to say, all right, I've got x plus 2 as my factor. That means I'm going to put negative 2 there. So don't make that mistake there. Make sure that if it's x plus 2, you're putting negative 2 there. Then we put an upside down division sign. And now we're going to put in all our coefficients. So we have 3, we have negative 8, we have negative 33, and we have negative 10, negative 10. I put another line underneath that, and now I solve this. So let me zoom in here, negative 3, negative, make sure you don't mess anything up there. All right, how do we do synthetic division? The first thing we do is we drop down our first one. So this is going to be 3. Then I'm going to go negative 2 times 3 is negative 6. Then I plus these two together. And if I plus these two together, I'm going to get negative 14. Then I'm going to go negative 2 times negative 14 is positive 28. I then plus these two together, which is going to leave me with negative 5. I then go negative 2 times negative 5 is going to be positive 10. And then I plus these two together, I get 0. Remember, this right here is my remainder. So the fact that I got 0 as my remainder makes perfect sense. I had to do it. If I didn't get 0, it meant I've done something wrong, because if x plus 2 is a factor and we divide something by a factor, we should get 0 remainder. So that checks out. Perfect. So let's now write down what our quadratic is based on this. It is going to be 3x squared minus 14x minus 5. And remember, that is my quadratic. I still have my other factor, which was x plus 2. So let's write that down as well. I did not mean to change the color there. Come on, work with me here. So this is going to be x plus 2 over there. So that is going to be the factorized form so far. I mean, it's not fully factorized yet. It's still a working progress, but we're doing something. We're moving. Okay, let's zoom out and see what our next step is going to be. So as you can see, we began with factor theorem, which is fantastic. We then did our synthetic division. The next thing that we're going to do is factorize our quadratic. So by doing that polynomial long division, we ended up with this green quadratic there. So let's bring this up like that. We're now going to spend some time factorizing the quadratic. So let's zoom in here. And let's factorize this green quadratic there. So we always know that we're going to have x plus 2 on the outside. We can just kind of leave that there for the time being. It's not important to us. We want to focus on this right here. We want to factorize that. In order to do that, we're going to have to consider our product, our sum, and our factor, what our factors will be. So the product is going to have to be, things are falling all over the place. So our factor is going to be 3 times negative 5. So that's going to be negative 15. Our sum is going to be negative 14. So therefore our factor is going to be negative 15 and 1, because negative 15 times 1 is negative 15, negative 15 plus 1 is negative 14. So now I could rewrite this as 3x squared minus 15x plus x minus 5. Now I factorize by grouping. So remember, x plus 2 is just hanging around for the ride here. It's just hanging. I'm going to get, I can take out 3x here. So I'm going to take out 3x here, which is going to leave me with x minus 5 on this side, which is beautiful because here I can take 1 out and I'm going to be left with x minus 5 here. Do that, do that. My last step is going to be writing it out, x plus 2. So I can take out x minus 5 as a common factor here, which is going to leave me with 3x plus 1, x minus 5. And just like that, I have factorized it. Hooray. So let's zoom out now and see what our next step is going to be. Let me zoom all the way out. All right. So we did our factor theorem. We did our polynomial long division. We factorized our cubic. So now what we're going to do, if I can find this, is we are going to just write out. So I've just written here factorized cubic. What is it? So after all that work, what is our factorized cubic going to be? So let me come over here. Let me Control C. Let me Control V. Let me bring this over here. Let's put it all in one color. Let's make it black. That is our factorized cubic right there. Beautiful. So that's really, really helpful because remember, we're trying to solve this for the inequality. So we've really just taken this and we have factorized it. Okay, so let's zoom in there. Let's zoom in here. And remember, the whole reason why we wanted to do this is because we want to find the x-intercepts, because if we were just to do that and that, zoom in here for a second, remember what we're trying to find here is when this is less than or equal to 0, when this is less than or equal to 0. And remember, whenever you're doing something like this, what it's asking you is when is this function below or equal to the x-axis, or below or touching the x-axis. So we're going to have to graph it. So we're going to have to identify what our x-intercepts are going to be. We can do this really easily. It's going to end up being -2. It's going to be -1/3, and it's going to be 5. Those are going to be our x-intercepts, just like that. So let's now come over here, and our next step is going to be graphing it. So there we go. We'll bring that over there, and we're going to move this. We're going to graph it. Let's just bring this over here. So, because that's kind of one step in itself, isn't it? All right. So we're here. Fantastic. Let's move that a bit up. So if I was to put all these points down, I'm going to end up with -2 here. I'm going to end up with -1/3. And here I'm going to get 5. Now, I need to ask myself, how am I going to draw this? And I know from the very beginning, if I was just to zoom out here, this is such a long question. If I was to zoom out, I can see that I have a positive x³ term. So that means I know how I'm going to draw this graph. If I come back over here for a second, it must be very disorienting when I move the screen like this. So when I come to draw this, it's going to start off by going up, then it's going to go down, then it's going to go up again. And remember, we don't have to worry about our y-intercepts. So that's basically what our graph is going to look like. Let's just make sure that 5 is not hidden too much. Let's just bring that out a little bit. And let's move this one out a bit. Perfect. So now that we've got that, remember what we're trying to find is when this is less than or equal to 0. So I'm going to grab this, and it's going to be less than all here. It's going to be less, less, less. And it's also going to be less between these ones right here. It's going to be less. So let's put those in right there. And remember, I'm also including where it's touching the x-axis. So I'm including that point, I'm including that point, and I'm including it. So closed circles just to remind me that I'm including it. So now, after all these steps, I can actually solve my inequality. So we can write here, solve inequality. And we're going to solve the inequality now. So very long question here. We're now solving the inequality. So what it's going to end up being is that I'm going to end up with x, and let me just make this a little bit smaller. X is going to be less than or equal to -2, or it's going to be -1/3 is less than or equal to x is less than or equal to 5. Or if I wanted to, I could write it as, I'm blanking on the name right now, set notation. So I could write it that my x is going to be -∞ to -2 inclusive the union of this -1/3 to 5, and I'm including that as well because it's less than or equal to. So both of those are legitimate answers. So you wouldn't have to write both, but I'm just showing you both to show that there's two ways of representing your answer just like that. Let's now zoom out and appreciate all the hard work we have done here because it's been quite a long question. So let's zoom out and see all our work here. Whoa, that's too zoomed out. I can't even fit it on one page. Okay, there we go. That is as good as it's going to get. Let's end on this shot right here. Whoa, things are breaking down. I'm not re-recording this video. It's taking me too long. Okay, there we go. There is all our working there. Hopefully this video has been helpful for you, and it's all been a bit of a flashback as to all we've learned, and really consider how satisfying that is, that we were able to take something very complicated and through all our knowledge, get our answer at the very end. Hopefully this has been helpful to you, and I'll see you in the next video.